one of the things that we did on Batman, Adam and I made a conscious effort in every show to do our best to like almost reach through that television set and grab our audience and bring them into the show. And we did that through all kinds of things that we said and we did and relating to the audience and stuff like that. But one of the things that we created that is now used in every movie, every major movie, we created a thing. And let me tell you what it is.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, humans around the world, through technological difficulties, with bravado and skill, he's arrived tonight to entertain you on the Talkulture show. You may know him from small roles like being Robin in one of the most iconic television shows of all time, Batman, the one and only Mr. Burt Ward.
Hello, citizens.
Oh my gosh. Burt, this is so fabulous. First of all, we love your background. This is so epic. Thank you so much for joining us here tonight.
Well, yeah, this is a shot right when we were filming Batman. You can see the whole crew right there. It was a rehearsal on the Santa Barbara Pier when we were actually filming the Batman movie. And this was it's a kind of a great shot because you've got, I mean, there it is. That's exactly what it looks like, when you're an actor. And you've got all these people and everybody has their job and, all the lights and the cameras and the work and oh my gosh, it's a great effort making film.
Now, I got to ask you a question. I see in the back, you mentioned everyone's in this picture, Burt, and it is such a great picture because it really, you have both you and Adam front and center, obviously, in front of the camera. And then behind you and to the right, we have some guy in a cowboy hat. We have another guy who looks important. But then let's go to the left side. We have a child there with her mother. Whose baby is that, Burt?
I don't know, but the ones that are like up by the camera there, that's the director of photography. And on the left in the black is the lighting director, and then sitting with the camera on the there's a camera mount that has seats on it, and those one is the camera operator, the other one is the follow focus, so that always everything stays in focus. I mean, these guys are like the best of the best, and you have a whole crew we had 80 men and on that crew, which is a very large crew. Normally it's about 30, 35, but 80 because of all the effects on Batman and trying to get those effects to work is quite a job.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I want to borrow that man's captain hat. So I feel like I'd look good in a captain hat. Josh, you can have the cowboy hat. I'll take the captain hat.
I mean, it is a styling cowboy hat.
It's pretty good. Well, Burt, one of the things that Josh and I are very passionate about is comic books and superheroes and everything that lives in that universe. But something that you're very passionate about is our furry friends. And I know Josh's cat just joined.
He must have known, like, did you see that? I call her my familiar, and she knew that, the Boy Wonder was here. So she said, you wanted to come say hello. So
I love what it says on your website too, from Cape to it was Cape Crusader to Cat Kitten Crusader. So we wanted to talk about gentle giants, and we were curious if there was a dog or a cat or another furry friend that first inspired you to start, with this charity and also your products.
Well, in a nutshell, what happened is this. Oh, there's a picture of me when I was filming Batman. Okay. And there, if you look at the script in my lap, at the time I had 18 cats in my apartment and a lion cub, a real lion, actually Clarence, the cross-eyed lion's brother I had. And this is an apartment in West Los Angeles. It was called the Barrington Plaza. It was like 26 stories tall. It was a big building. And I knew the owner, and he let me have my cats, including the wild one. But it was how we got started with what we've been doing in the last 27 years is that my wife and I operate the world's largest giant breed dog rescue. Giant breed meaning Great Danes, St. Bernards, Irish Wolfhounds, Mastiffs, so many, Russian Wolfhounds, so many different breeds of dogs. And here you can see some of them there. And in the last 27 years, we've rescued more than 15,500 dogs all of which
incredible.
would have been put to death if we hadn't been there to save them. And we did this. How it came about is that my wife and I had a daughter where we were living and at the beach in Southern California, and we had, property at the beach area is so valuable that everybody bills up. You know what I mean? It's like we had 5 feet on 3 sides of our house of ground and 15 feet in the front, but we had a 4,000 square foot house on a 2,000 square foot lot. And when you have all these balconies and stuff, and here you have a little one, right? And you start to imagine, oh my God, on a 40-foot balcony, I can't have this little
Absolutely not.
My daughter. Oh no! So we decided to move inland, and we moved about an hour in from Los Angeles inland, halfway between LA and Palm Springs, to the last western town in America. It's called Norco, California, where horses have the right of way over cars, where by law every commercial building has to have a Western theme, has to have a horse tie-up. There are literally thousands of horses in this community. And it's not just horses, but they allow other animals. Like, for example, you see there's a lady I know that rides her camel. Okay, people that camels and llamas and emus and
oh my,
and then of course the regular farm animals, these like a giant pig. I mean, you think of a pig as not that big, but wait till you see one that's 800 pounds. You know what I mean? I mean, there's some huge animals, and it's very animal friendly. And every property has to have a horse trail either in front of it or behind it. And in fact, to give you an idea, it's very Americana. So like, when you drive down the street and you normally see dotted white lines in where we live, they don't have dotted white lines. They have dotted red, white, and blue lines, because that's the American flag. So they have rodeos and, all those kinds of things that, you almost say, well, gee, God, wasn't that back like in the 50s or the 60s and out in the country where they have the rodeos and stuff, and they have professional bull riders. And I mean, this is a real, so it was a great place for us to move. It was very animal friendly and child friendly. So we didn't get a multi-story house. We got a nice 1-story home. And in the course of bringing our daughter up, we thought it'd be great to get a dog for her, a pet. And I always liked Great Danes. My wife had grown up with Irish Wolfhounds. So we found a Great Dane that needed to be rescued. And when we rescued the dog, it was going to go to a shelter. And in the shelters, unfortunately, they can't keep the dogs but a few days, and they have to put them to sleep because there's just too many animals coming in and not enough people adopting. So then we heard of another Great Dane that needed rescue, and we took that one. And then we heard some others, but they were in people's homes where and they weren't in the shelter where there was what we considered to be immediate danger. Later on, we found out that the people that we didn't take them from eventually gave them up to a shelter, and they were all put to death. And it was the first week in August of 1994 that I said to my wife, Tracy, I said, we can't let these dogs die. How about just for a couple of weeks till we find somebody else to take this over? Just a couple of weeks. Let's take these beautiful Great Danes in. And what had happened was dogs have rescued by breed. Like there's a Chihuahua rescued, a German Shepherd rescued. There's a Great Dane rescue. But the lady who had been operating the rescue for all of Southern California herself had died. And so all these Great Danes were going straight to shelters and being put to death. And they are truly gentle giants. They are giant.
I've dealt with a few Great Danes before, and mixed with a bloodhound, and they are definitely gentle giants. And the one I'm not familiar with that you mentioned was Irish Wolfhound. Is that the one that has the real coarse, kind of jagged fur looking things?
Yeah, and then there's the Russian Wolfhound. And then there's exotic ones like an American Staghound, which is a Wolfhound, Deerhound, Borzoi, Greyhound combination. And I mean, there are some unique, and we have had dogs from all over the world. Siberian Ovcharkas from Siberia. We've had wire-haired Ibizan hounds from Egypt. We've rescued dogs from all over the world. So anyway, what happened was by the end of August of 1994, that's which is a long time ago, we found ourselves with 102 full-size Great Danes inside our house and 62 puppies under 7 weeks of age. 62 puppies, 7 litters of puppies. We never bred anything, but we rescued from shelters. And a shelter will call us and say, you know, we just took in a pregnant Great Dane, or we just took in a Great Dane that's already got her puppies, and here in the shelter there can be disease. You know what I mean? As much as we try to avoid it, you know, we got to get them out of the shelter. Can you take them? And yeah, we'll take them. Well, you know, the 2 weeks went by, and my wife for the last 27 years has been reminding me that 2 weeks turned into 27 years.
Right?
Still never found anybody to come rescue us.
Oh my gosh.
So imagine having 102 giant dogs. And when I say giant, you know, most people think of a big dog weighing 100 pounds. Not too many people have seen a dog weigh 150 to 200 pounds. And almost nobody has ever seen a dog that weighed 300 pounds. And I'm not talking a fat dog. I'm talking gigantic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, for example, one of our dogs, Sammy, when he stands up on his hind legs, you know, he's got his paws up, he stands 7 feet 5 inches tall, 4 inches taller than Shaquille O'Neal, 4 inches taller, and weighs 285 pounds.
And how's his basketball game?
Huh?
Oh, I was asking about Shaquille.
No, but I mean, you know how tall these giant basketball players are. To have dogs that are taller than the basketball players,
that's insane.
that's really big dogs. And we had the largest dog in the world here. His name was Avalanche, and it was a perfect name for him because he weighed 305 pounds, and he would come over to you while you're seated, and before you know it, he would somehow sit in your lap. And nobody, I guarantee nobody ever got up once he sat in the lap. You had to get him off. Because
when Avalanche wanted you, when he was done with you, he was done with you.
Yeah, right. But anyway, but these giant breeds traditionally live very short lifespans. And when we would lose one, my wife and I would literally sob. I mean, it just tore us apart. And we vowed if there was a way to try to find to help them live longer, healthier, happier lives. And we first developed this feeding program where we feed dogs differently than other people do. And we've now got it where we do cats as well. But right now, we started with dogs. And for example, we feed our dogs a minimum of 5 or more times a day, smaller, more frequent meals. People say, well, why would you do that? Well, several reasons. One, there is a deadly condition called bloat and torsion that kills up to 10% of the dogs in America every year, caused by food in the stomach combined with stress or exercise. So the people that feed their dog only once or twice a day, which is probably 98% of the country, their dogs are at risk of this deadly condition because they're carrying too much food on their stomach at any one given time. Secondly, dogs' bodies wear out very quickly. The average dog, by the time it's 7 or 8 years old, starts to have a problem getting up, starts to have a problem walking. And within a year or two, it can't get up anymore. And when it starts to poop and pee on itself, that's when people take it to the vet to be put to sleep, even though mentally the dog is perfectly alert. And emotionally, the dog loves you because it's given you a whole life of love and would never think that you would put it down, which it becomes a real tragedy. So by finding out what it is to help dogs live longer, we designed a feeding and care program that does just that. Okay.
I think we have a picture of that. Jude, can you bring up a picture of that? I think we have some of the products that you're mentioning too. So keep going. We absolutely just want to make sure.
So just to think of it this way, one of the things that people call us and say to us, they say, I don't understand. I watch videos on your website and dogs running around like puppies in their 20s. And my dog is 8 years old, and can barely get up. It doesn't seem fair. Well, they don't know what we know. And when we start to show them what we know, that actually can make a gigantic change. For example, there's a dog there in that picture. It says 26 years old. Her name is Tara. That's the one there. It's kind of a gray head. She's a Russian wolfhound. We took her out of a shelter at 12 years of age. She had been turned into the shelter because the owners thought she was about to die. They didn't want her to die in their home. So they took her to a shelter to die in a shelter. And we took her out, nursed her to better health, gave her our food, and she lived to 27 and a half years.
That's incredible.
It really, it's a miracle almost. I mean, it's unheard of.
Right. And it's a breed. That breed only lives 7 to 9 years. So at 27 and a half years old, she was nearly 4 times her normal lifespan. But this isn't just an anomaly. We have many of our dogs. In fact, right now, I mean, look at the ages of those dogs in the picture. Those are all the real thing. Okay. And we have dogs now here, right here in our home. In fact, there's one about 8 feet away from me. It's 25 and a half years old.
Oh my God.
And people, they're blown away by it. But it is all science. Okay. It is science, and it is the right food. And we feed our dogs. We made a special food called Gentle Giants. It's different from every other dog food in the world. People say, well, how can it be that different? And I say, well, okay, here's an example. Whatever you're feeding your dog, or in your case, Josh, your cat, go pick up a few of those kibbles, rub them in your fingers, put the kibbles down, rub your fingers together. You're going to feel a slightly greasy feeling.
Mhm.
That is animal fat that was sprayed onto the food for only one purpose: to make your pet eat more food, to make you buy more pet food. Kind of unscrupulous, isn't it? And then what happens is, when you increase the fat content in an animal's food, it actually confuses them to believe they're always hungry. Now, there is a human example of this that I'd like to mention to you that kind of brings it home for many of your viewers and listeners. And about 10 years ago, there was a gentleman named Morgan Spurlock that went into a McDonald's in Ohio, and he ate at that McDonald's breakfast, lunch, dinner, and a snack for 30 days. At the end of 30 days, he had gained 55 pounds and nearly died because of the fat content in the food. They made a movie about it. It was called Super Size Me. Did you ever hear about that movie?
I have seen that.
Yes.
One. I have.
Very familiar. Yes.
There is
there was
exactly.
Doug
that.
Benson made another one too, I think, called Super High Me, when he just tried to smoke marijuana for 30 days straight. It was more of a comedy.
Oh, Jesus. But anyway, there's your example of what a fat content will do.
Gentle
And,
Giants is the name of the products. It seems
yeah.
like you're so passionate about this, and I think that's amazing. You know, you mentioned we had a similar issue with one of our dogs he's a Brussels Griffin. He was a dog, and he lived to be about 15, but the last several years he suffered from seizures and had some brain problems because his liver started to fail because he couldn't break down the protein of all the junk food that we unfortunately
no.
earlier in
There's
his
too
life
much
he had been
protein
eating.
in dog food. The
Exactly.
dog food company, you have to understand, they don't do what's best for the dog. They do what's best to sell the food.
To sell the
So,
food.
for example, you go to a pet store, and you can look up on the shelf and you'll see there is a bag of food and it says 24% protein. One on the right might say 28%. One in the center says 32%. You say, oh, 32% protein. I'm going to get more bang for my buck, and my dog's going to get more protein. Well, more protein actually isn't better. Anything above 22% protein can prematurely burn your dog's kidneys out. People don't know. Okay. In fact, I use
kidneys. That's what it was, not the liver. I said liver.
Yeah, I use human examples. Do you remember there was a very famous diet called the Atkins diet? A lot of people had heard about the Atkins diet. Dr. Atkins had a diet that was based on almost pure protein. In other words, no carbohydrates. You just meat, potatoes, fish, protein. And he died of kidney disease. And the customers who were buying his diet were coming down with kidney disease too. Again, too much protein can prematurely burn your kidneys out. So it fell out of favor. It is all the same principle. And it doesn't matter if you're a human or a dog or a cat. Too much protein is bad for you. Too much fat is bad for you. But these are things that sell. The protein helps sell the food. The fat makes dogs and cats hungrier. And in the case of our cats, because I see you have one there, our cat, we lost two of our
She's up
cats.
here. She's up there. She jumped
Yeah,
off the
I
chair.
hear
She
you.
leapt
I
on.
hear
She's
We
elevated
lost,
right now.
we lost two of our cats last year. One was 31 and the other was 32.
Wow, and that's incredible.
Yeah,
No,
but you can't do that with the foods that have too much grease in them, too much fat in them. I mean, and by the way, my wife and I, we own this company and we take no salary from this. This is not about money. This is all about trying to help animals live longer.
What's the website we can check this out? Is it Gentle Giant?
There's GentleGiantsDogFood.com. There's
Okay.
GentleGiantsDogFood.com, GentleGiantsCatFood.com, and our store is GentleGiantsPetProducts.com.
Now, Burt, I had a maybe peculiar question, and I'm not sure whether you've been asked about this particular animal before, but my husband and I have a hedgehog, and our hedgehog's diet consists of cat food. That's what was recommended.
Uh-huh.
I know hedgehogs unfortunately do not have the longest lives. You get to love them for a couple years, but I have to be curious if your product would maybe help a hedgehog, because their lifespan is about only 5 to 8 years. So
Right.
I'm very curious because we got what we were recommended. I've never heard anything about this protein content or anything about what's in the food before, because I've never had a dog or a cat. So for me, I'm very curious, and I think I'm going to try it on our little Vladimir. So I'm curious.
Let me talk about that. Believe it or not, we have people feeding our food, our dog food and our cat food, to a whole slew of different animals, not just your hedgehog. We have, for example, and I know you might find it very unusual, but we have people that feed our dog food to lions and tigers, the real thing, lions and tigers.
Now, is that unusual, or is that a common thing? Because
no, again, it's not, but it supplements their diet. And in fact, in Florida, there was a very wild animal preserve. They were feeding, they had what they call ligers. A liger is a lion-tiger combination. That's the one that can be 10.5 feet tall. If you've ever seen a liger, it's not like any tiger or anything you've ever seen, because it's like 3 times the size of them. But they were feeding, and then I got a call about a month ago from a lady up in Idaho, and she has a tiger. She didn't want to give me her name because, it's against the law to have them, wild animals. And but she had called about it. She was feeding her tiger Gentle Giant's dog food. And you have to understand, people say, well, no, but tigers, they need meat. They're carnivorous, they're meat eaters. But let me tell you something, that's actually not completely true at all. In fact, our national sales director, his brother-in-law is a wild animal vet. And he spoke to his brother-in-law, and the brother-in-law explained that when a tiger or lion or any of the cats make a kill, the first thing they eat is the contents of the stomach, which are the grains and plants. The last thing they eat is the leg meat, which is the meat. So people think that, they think of only in terms of the wild animals eat as meat eaters, as carnivores, and that's all they want is the meat. It's actually not true. So the long and short of it is, our food is fed to many different kinds of animals. I have people tell me, oh, I've got a whole bunch of pet squirrels, I have deer, and they're feeding Gentle Giants to all of these animals. And let me tell you why it works. Because it isn't some foreign, unusual thing that dogs and cats eat. We feed chicken. We have chicken. We also have wild caught Alaskan salmon. We have beef with bacon. And these are all coming from sources that provide human food. So in the case like of our chicken, we don't get it from a third-rate location or something. We buy it from the #1 provider of chicken in the United States, was the company called Tyson. If you go in your grocery store, you'll see Tyson. That's where we buy our chicken. So just because it is put into a form that is a kibble doesn't mean it isn't just as nutritious as anything else. And it's very nutritious. But something else really important, the 2 biggies, how we have dogs living so long, is 1, we don't have all the fat in the food or greasy fat on the outside. And people say, well, okay, so my kibble's a little bit greasy. Why is it such a big deal? I said, well, let me ask you this. Would you take a can of bacon grease, pour it down your garbage disposal at home? Oh, of course not. Well, why wouldn't you? Well, because it'd clog it up. And I said, well, of course, because that water evaporates, but animal fat coagulates. And when it hardens, it's like cement. So if you took a can of bacon fat, you poured it down your garbage disposal and leave it there for 4 or 5 hours, you're going to call a plumber the next day to replace the pipes in your sink. And they say, okay, well, what's that got to do with feeding my dogs? Well, when you consider that every single bite of food you feed your cat or a dog is encapsulated, that's 360 degrees of animal fat. What do you think that fat is doing to their intestines and to their arteries? It's clogging them, okay? Shortening their lives. So that's a really biggie. The other really biggie is non-GMO foods. almost all food, let's take rice in the United States, and rice is used in pet food a lot. 98% of the rice that you could buy in the United States, and it doesn't matter whether it's white or brown or whatever, has been genetically modified. 98%. Only 2% is non-GMO. So, well, what's the whole GMO thing? Well, genetically modified organisms, the reason why it's done on our food supply is because when a farmer grows rice, well, guess what? Pests will attack it. And what does he do to get rid of the pests? They spray pesticide. What happens to the plant? It often dies. So by genetically changing the composition of the DNA, so to speak, of the plant, what you end up with is a plant that has pests attack it, and pesticides get sprayed on it, but the plant doesn't die, the rice is produced. However, that rice has absorbed the pesticide. And you take an animal who has a frail, their immune systems are not like humans. Even humans, don't you see on television all the time? Oh, if you used Roundup and now you have this kind of cancer, or in a field that they had paraquat, and call these law firms and stuff. Well, it's because these are carcinogens in these things, and they're causing cancer in humans and animals. So one of the reasons that, let's take dogs. In the United States, 94% of all the dogs die of cancer. And in fact, on our website, gentlegiantsdogfood.com, we also have it on gentlegiantscatfood.com, under our non-GMO ingredients, there's a great video. We didn't produce it, but we found it with all these prominent veterinarians of our time. And they're basically saying all the same thing. It's about an 8-minute video, but all these vets are interviewed. And here's what they say. 10, 15, 20 years ago, they would see one patient, dog or cat, a month that had cancer. Now, every single day, 1 out of every 2 patients, dog or cat, has cancer. That's unbelievable. They attribute it to the genetically modified organisms in the food. So in our case, to go out and realize that we're going for the 2%, that's all there is in the United States of the rice, 2%. Took us a year and a half to find suppliers. It's not just rice, it's every ingredient, all the fruits, all the vegetables, okay, the meat, the corn that's fed to the chickens. It is a monstrous job to have non-GMO ingredients, and all of our foods are non-GMO. So when you combine the fact we don't have all the grease and fat inside or outside the food, we don't have too much protein, we have non-GMO, you start putting all these things together, and what happens? The animals are living longer. And it's not that we discovered the fountain of youth. Believe me, if we did, I'd be drinking from it. It's just that we're not prematurely killing animals. Animals can live a whole lot longer if you don't kill them by putting genetically modified organisms in their food and covering their food and inside and out with grease. That's the difference. And we do that every single day. And right now, I always have a minimum of 50 dogs in my house. Okay, a minimum. Okay, for 27 years. And these are all different ones because we get them and adopt them and get them and adopt them and so on. But the point is that right now, I've got about 70% of the dogs in my home right now have already lived twice their normal lifespan. We've become like a sanctuary. Our youngest dog's 14 and a half, up to 25. Now, these are giant.
Do you name them?
breeds.
Now, what do you name them after? Do you name them after
My wife
things?
names them, and my wife has what they
Is it
call
a feeling? Is it a
memory.
feeling? It's a visual feeling. So she sees them and goes, "You look like Walt."
No. Some come with names. She could recite all 15,000 dogs' names. She's got a visual memory. It's like a photographic memory. So I can't do it, but I can't even begin to do it. But I know the dogs I have now at any one given time, and all of our dogs live communally together. Like, you don't hear any barking, do you? And I'm in a room with about 18 dogs here right now in this room, and you don't hear a single word because we've taught our dogs not to bark unless they sense danger. And on our website, there's a section of our special feeding care program. You can see a video of about 35 dogs standing shoulder to shoulder, eating out of our raised feeders, okay, which has to be raised. But
because they're tough, yeah.
Nobody's fighting. Nobody's growling. they're all eating peacefully together, living harmoniously together in a nurturing environment. And environment's very, so you combine all these things together, and that's why we can have dogs living into their late 20s and cats living into their early 30s.
And it's, I have to say, like, I so appreciate your passion, because like I said, this is something I've never heard before. I've never heard this about, comparing dog and cat food to human food. And the reason, it's the same, like you said, with Atkins and other foods. It's the reason why people aren't living their longest, most fulfilling lives. And now that you're applying it to these like precious animals that now get to live longer, healthier lives, it's such a, gosh, these dogs are so lucky, and cats are so lucky to have you and your wife in their lives. I mean, it's so beautiful,
and we have fun doing it, and again, what my wife Tracy and I are doing. We're trying to make a better world for all of us. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to leave this world better off than we found it. And it's so funny because in business, people always, no matter how much money they make, they want to make more. It's like we don't have that. We don't have that burden. My wife and I both done well enough to be able to live the rest of our life. So instead of chasing after the almighty dollar, we are trying to do things that really make a difference. And, like, for example, some of the people that they have their dogs and cats, like one man wrote on our website, he sent an email. He said, you don't know me. My German Shepherd's been on your dog food for 15 years. He just died. He was 23 years old. 23 years old for a German Shepherd. And he doesn't necessarily know all the way we feed and this and that. I mean, we're here 24/7. You know what I mean? Neither my wife and I have to go anywhere to work. So we're here. So we're constantly developing the best technology. And just think of it this way. Can you imagine if you lived with a minimum of 50 dogs in your home, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, 24 hours a day for 27 years? Don't you think you would learn a lot? We feed 600 pounds of our food here every day. Those big bags of dog food, 20 bags a day, every single day for 27 years. It is backbreaking just to lift.
Where do you guys keep all the food? Do you have a warehouse in the back? You keep all the food?
We actually have a compound. We actually have a studio now. We're going to be making movies and television. We have a recording room. We're building a sound stage on our property. We have a really wonderful setup, and we have a whole setup for, just to give you an idea, you see a pallet with big pallet with food on it. We feed a pallet every 2 days. Of food.
My goodness.
So you're friends with the truck. You're friends with the trucker driver, right?
Yeah,
you're good friends with Paul, who comes and drops it off on Wednesdays, Fridays, and Mondays.
Well, we actually ship 100 trucks a week of our food.
That's incredible.
Semis a week. So we get the food and everything here. But the whole point of what we're trying to do is we're focusing on best practices, best technology. And anyway, it's become our charity. So while at the same time, I like to continue in the movie business, and my wife and I, we have our own studio, and we're building and we're doing all this stuff. Nevertheless,
your true passion is with these dogs, and this has clearly been the case. 20 years, and the product, again, Gentle Giants pet products, if you want to look it up. And also, if you're in the Southern California area and you have a Gentle Giant, a large Russian Wolfhound, or a Saint Bernard, please look up Burt and look up his facility and his compound out there in Norco, California, because it's the Wild West out there, like he was saying earlier. And here we're happy
Josh,
to help.
If you go to our website, gentlegiantsdogfood.com, if you go there, the first thing you'll see is a full screen video of my wife and I in bed with 50 giants. 11-minute video in bed with 50 giants. We had to slow it down, because if you have 50 dogs moving at the same time, it'll give you a headache in about 30 seconds. So we slowed it down to be in slow, a little slower motion, so you can see all of them moving, how they all relate to each other, how they groom each other, how they treat us, jumping on the bed, jumping over the bed. You know, I mean, and then
Movies and dogs go together well, I would say. And
let me just tell you,
obviously,
at the end
absolutely.
at the end of this video, which is 11 minutes long, right near the end, I have a big English Mastiff, 295 pounds. Okay, I mean, his head is like a beach ball, not even a basketball, like one of those big beach balls. And anyway, he sits down on my ankle with 295 pounds, almost broke my leg. And my wife, Tracy, is just laughing hysterically. She thinks it's the funniest thing she ever saw. But all of these, they're all on the bed. We have a special bed to support that kind of weight.
I was going to ask, I hope it's a California King or bigger.
It is. But it's got 6-inch legs, 6-inch thick legs to support the weight. Because you're talking about at any given time, there could be, I don't know, maybe 2,000, 2,500 pounds on that bed of living, moving love.
Oh my goodness. Well,
that's incredible. And you know, a good segue. We were talking about you're building a movie studio. Yeah. I'm sure you are well aware there is a new Batman film yes. that is released. Are you planning on seeing it? And
Absolutely. I was interviewed today by the London Times. It is a huge success, this new movie, and it's wonderful. But I pointed out in earlier to this newspaper that if it wasn't for Batman, you may not have seen any of these movies and superheroes on television or in the theaters. You know what I mean? We started it, and
you sure did.
Yeah, you did. And one of the things that a technical thing in movies that I think you might get a kick out of knowing. This is like really kind of a trivia thing, but when we were making Batman back in 1966, programming, whether it's television or movies, was what I would call very third person, meaning you're sitting there watching a good guy or a bad guy and interacting and all this, but you're out of it. You're not in it. You're out of it, just watching, where you're not emotionally involved, you know what I mean? Because it's not affecting you. One of the things that we did on Batman, Adam and I made a conscious effort in every show to do our best to like almost reach through that television set and grab our audience and bring them into the show. And we did that through all kinds of things that we said and we did and relating to the audience and stuff like that. But one of the things that we created that is now used in every movie, every major movie, we created a thing. And let me tell you what it is. It's like in the middle of maybe the most dramatic, serious moment, there's like a break in the dialogue where there's some laughter, where there's some kind of a thing. Like I'll give you an example and how it came about on Batman. Batman and Robin in a warehouse. We're looking for the Joker, and all of a sudden, from the rafters, 8 giant guys drop down on the ground. Okay, now they're, you know what I mean, and ready for a fight. And I had a great line on Batman where I said, "Gosh, Batman, there's 8 of them against 2 of us. Odds in our favor." Right? Because there's only 8 of them, right?
Right.
So, but
subtle charm, very subtle charm.
Start looking at movies, how all the Marvel movies do it. Look at Bad Boys, you know what I mean, where they have a dialogue in the most deadly moment. Like, if I ever get out of this mess, I'm never coming back to your house. Kind of. In other words, there's this break of comedy relief. We created that, and it's used in all movies. And so we're very, very proud of that. And on Batman, I must tell you something. Normally, these directors will say, "Oh, well, say your line like this, or do it that way, or can you be more emotional, or whatever." On Batman, with 32 directors on 120 episodes, not one director ever told Adam or I how to say our lines.
No line reads. Great. No, yeah, they just left it to you.
Yeah, they would say, "Well, now you're in front of the Bat Cave right now, or you're in front of the Bat Computer, or you're in the Batmobile ready to drive." I mean, they would set the scene, but other than that, we always did our own dialogue. And Adam and I, had this incredible chemistry. I don't know. When I first met him at my screen test, okay, I was introduced to him. I didn't even know what I was screen testing for. Nobody told me what it was. And I said, and they said, "Oh, here, you're going to be reading with this actor. His name is Adam West." And I said, "Oh, hi, how are you?" And he's very nice. Within 5 minutes, the two of us talking to each other, we're laughing. we never stopped laughing for 55 years.
Oh my
That's
God.
the relationship we had. It was so incredible. We were such good friends. I had such love for him. This is not normal in television. There's all this competition of the bigger star and the smaller star, with all of that kind of stuff. Adam and I were like incredible friends. We played tennis on the weekends. You know, we'd be out there playing tennis and on a public court, and people would kind of look at you and then look at me and look at Adam and say, "Oh my God, it's Batman and Robin playing tennis." You know, that kind of a thing. And
who is the better tennis player between the two of you?
oh, me, because I'm much faster. You know what I mean? You have to understand, Adam and I, why our chemistry was so great is we were so opposite of each other. If you think about it, in history, the greatest comic duos always had great set difference. Laurel and Hardy, right? Abbott and Costello, Ed McMahon, Johnny Carson. There was always great, you know, opposites. They were the opposites of each other. So Adam was like, well, Mr. Very Debonair. He kind of thought of himself like Winston Churchill. You know, it's like, I mean, he once told me, and you have to understand, he really believed this. He would say to me one time, "You know, Burt, I really understand now the importance of playing Batman." I said, "Oh, really, Adam?" "Yeah." And I said, "Well, how did that come about?" "Well, I was watching Charlton Heston play Moses in the Ten Commandments, and he had just received the word of God." I said, "Oh my God, Adam! Oh my God! Don't tell anybody that, please." Yeah. And so as debonair and everything had to be this and that. I was like the kid, fast talking, this and this and this, you know. And so we contrasted each other, you know.
You guys had that legendary chemistry, just like you were saying, and it was such a starting point in cinema at the time. Everything was turning around, and you know, everything from the Batman show to how they tilted the camera to the side to the delivery.
You know why they tilted
lines.
The camera? You know why they tilted the camera? I didn't know. I didn't know at the time. The reason they tilted the camera, they only did it on the villains and on the villains' hideouts. You know why they did it? Because the villains were crooked.
Oh.
Right. I mean, I didn't know that at the time. I said, "Geez, are these cameramen drinking? What's going on?"
Right.
You know, I can't figure it out. Why can't they turn the camera straight? But they did it on purpose.
Oh my gosh.
And so Adam and I we had the best time. You know what I mean? We had, and the other thing is the audience we reached was very broad. For kids, it was hero worship. I mean, who wouldn't want to ride in the Batmobile, climb walls, fight heinous villains, you know what I mean? Rescue people. I mean, it was like total fantasy for adults.
What was it like back then? Like nowadays, there's conventions and such you can go to, and the fans will go up to you, I'm sure, and tell you how influential you were in their lives. Did you ever get the rush? Like, were you recognized? And like, when was the first time you were recognized as Robin?
3 months after the series came out, I made my first appearance in Tacoma, Washington, at a place called the B&I Circus Store. It was like a typical department store, but what made them very unique, the reason they call it circus store, is they had wild animals in cages, and that's where I got my pet lion. And I fell in love with this pet lion with Clarence. At the time, there was a very famous lion. If you look back at his name, was Clarence the Cross-eyed Lion.
Cross-eyed Lion. I heard you mention him earlier.
There was Dr. McWhirter that had raised him, and this was his brother. Okay, this lion cub, and I just fell in love with him, and I bought him. And now this is in Washington. There's all kinds of laws, by the way, about transporting wild animals in states and stuff. So you know how they got him to me? They put him in a wood crate where you really couldn't see. You had lots of holes for air, right? A big wood crate. I mean, he was still small. He was only 3 months at the time. And they've just put on their cat on the outside. Well, that's true. It's definitely a cat.
It's a cat.
And I'll tell you something. This was the sweetest animal in the whole world. I loved him so much. Unfortunately, in the wild, 50% of lions die in the wild. And in this particular case, his lungs never grew with the rest of his body. And I was paying, I found Dr. McWhirter in Los Angeles, and I was paying him to come give him shots every single day. We didn't know until a few months later after he passed that his lungs had never grown with the rest of his body, or I probably still have him today. But he was so good. He loved our cats. He didn't try to hurt them. Well, just imagine, and you have to imagine what a lion looks like when it's like 2.5, 3 months old. It kind of wobbles as it runs, you know what I mean? And I had these 18 cats that would get under my bed. Okay. And here would come this lion. He couldn't get under the bed because he's too big, right? But he'd get in the bed, and then on the other side, boom, you'd see 18 cats in all directions.
Hit the deck.
But I'll tell you the thing that was so funny about him. He was very smart. He's very smart. He saw that they kept going in the bathroom to get to their cat pan, right? So what this lion cub would do, he would pretend to go to sleep in the doorway, okay, kind of blocking, right? And these cats would be like tiptoeing, trying to tip by him to get to that cat pan. All of a sudden, a big paw would come down him, and he would just wash them. Oh, he loved them. He didn't want to hurt them. He loved them. But his tongue was like a razor. I mean, or like a file. You know what I mean? Gosh, unless you can feel the tongue of a lion or tiger, you've never it's just like unbelievable. So anyway, it was a wonderful part of my life. His name was Puff. I named because he had a big black puff at the end of his tail, and he was so loving. And it was funny because next door to the building was the grocery store. So I would, being in the 26 stories up, I would have people bring the groceries up. They knock on the door and, oh, come in. And they'd come in, they start to put the groceries, and then he would kind of waddle into the kitchen area. And, if you look at them, you have to understand, their heads are as big as their bodies. So you don't really know quite what you're looking at. You know what I mean? It's not exactly a lion, if you know what I mean. And yet when he would turn his head and go in or like that, it wasn't a roar. I mean, it was just like opening his mouth. They go, oh my God, a lion. They run out,
This isn't worth my $5, mister. I'm out of here.
You're right. It wasn't worth his tip.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that we definitely think is worth mentioning is you recently received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. And I wanted to say I absolutely adored your speech. And one of the things that I pulled from it is that you said thoughts can be things. And right. I think that that's a wonderful way to live. And I was just wondering, when you first started living using that, thoughts can be things.
I started when I was a child. In fact, I have kind of an interesting background. My father believed in early work ethic, So I was working at age 2 as the world's youngest professional ice skater in my father's traveling ice show at age 2. And I kind of, it's hard to remember much, but the one thing I do remember is I remember being on my little skates, which, by the way, the whole skate, including the blades, were not more than 7 or 8 inches long. Okay. And then my shoe was a little tiny thing. But my father had this traveling ice show, which was the predecessor to the Ice Capades, which became, of course, very famous. But my father, before that, had this traveling, it's called Rhapsody on Ice. And we traveled around, and I can remember as a child where these professional skaters would take me out on the ice, and you couldn't see the audience. You could hear them, but all you could see is the bright lights because they're in the dark and, light is shining on the ice. And that what they would do is they took my hands and they skated around, because you have people in all circles around, and they would skate around holding my hand. And still, a 2-year-old child on skates, even though they're holding the hands, people, oh, well, that's nice. And then they would let me go, and I would skate around by myself, and people were screaming. Nobody at 2 years of age skating by themselves on the ice, you know what I mean? So anyway, it was a great thing growing up. But for me, how I talk about thoughts or things, I was kind of I was a quiet child. I was a kind of a loner growing up, and I spent all my time growing up kind of like where I'd be by myself, and kind of like a dream world, fantasy world, where they didn't have Batman comic books where I grew up. They had Superman comic books or Superboy, and I always wanted to be like Superboy, and I would come home from school and I would spend hours outside. We had these big walls, and I would just kick the ball against the wall and run and kick it and get hours and hours daydreaming about being a superhero. And that's where thoughts are things. I honestly believe if you think hard enough, long enough, and put enough energy into it, you actually can bring things good or bad to you. You know what I mean? You actually can bring it because we're all kind of electrical, you know? And so that's, and it isn't interesting. I have a photo of me when I was 3 years old on a tricycle with a bath towel around my neck held together with a clothespin, where I wanted to be a super, and I'm 3 years old on a tricycle. And
Destiny.
I grew up, and you know, when I tried out for Batman, there were 1,100 young actors that tried out for this role. 1,100. And when they selected me, I was really honored. And the executive producer said to me, Burt, you know, we interviewed for the last 2 years 1,100 young actors for this role, but we decided on you. And he said, would you like to know why? And I said, yes, sir, I would like very much to know why. He said, the reason we selected you, Burt, is because in our minds, forgetting television, if there really was a Robin, I mean, like the real thing, we think you personally would be it. So we don't want you to, quote, act. We just really want you to do two things. One, be yourself, and two, be enthusiastic. Well, God, I mean, that's like nothing for me. I'm an enthusiastic person to begin with, right? So
You don't say.
that was no stretch, you know, and it's so funny through all these years when I would do Batman movies or this or that, or the people would say, oh, is it hard for you to get back in the role? No, I never left it. I mean, or it never left me. And so as a result of that, you know, I found it very interesting and very easy for me to do it, and very consistent. So that's why I was selected from all those people, because they really believe that, you know, and the things that I did, the mannerisms, the hitting your fist together, all the kinds of things that Adam and I did, those were ours. Nobody said, oh, do this or do that. They just,
You know, as a fellow voice guy, I'm a voice actor professionally.
I can tell, yeah.
Thank you, sir.
How did you know?
I mean, a very complimentary way.
Thank you, sir. No, I really appreciate that. I'm flattered to hear that. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Your voice definitely was iconic to me. I remember watching Batman growing up, and I'm 40 years old, so I was born in the 80s. So we were the last generation pre, you know, cell phones, pre everything, when we still were living, watching those movies. They were on Action 36. We had 12 channels, and that it was always on. So I always got to watch it. It blew my mind because I would watch the shows. And then my dad one day was like, you know, there's a movie, right? And I was like, there's a movie? Like, and when I saw the movie, it was like, oh my God, the helicopter. And I just remember that everything was so incredible to me. And your voice was the boy wonder voice. It was golly willikers, you know what I mean? It was so, people would impersonate that for years around me. My dad especially would do it a lot. He would do an impersonation of you very poorly.
Oh, I was going to ask how was impersonation.
It was, you know, I never told dad that. I told dad it was great, but dad always,
as you should.
Dad takes credit to this day for some of the voices I've created in media, and I let him. I say, "You got it, Dad."
That's wonderful. I was actually paid a really nice compliment on the last Batman movie I did with Adam West, where we did two back-to-back feature films animated with our voices. This last one was Batman versus. Wait a minute. Well, there was Batman, the Batman reunion, and then the one that what? Two-Face, yeah. With
thank you.
My wife
Thank
in the
you.
background. William Shatner
you,
played. Okay.
You may not hear me, you may not see me, but I'm always by his side.
Yeah, that's my wife in the background. Yeah. So,
you guys are great.
But I had a great compliment when I was doing the voice, and they had us do it separately. They wanted, for reasons of mixing and stuff, and as I didn't do it at the time Adam did it, he came in after me and did his parts. You know what I mean? But just imagine. I mean, I something kind of unique happened. I'm there, and I can, you know, you're in a booth, and you see there's a much bigger booth, and you got the director and the script writer and the producers and the voice person, and I mean, you get all these people, right? All these people that are involved in the production. And as I'm starting to do my lines, I'm seeing everybody in there is laughing, and I'm saying, no, wait a minute, there's something wrong here. I mean, they all know what I'm going to say, right? I mean, this thing has been chewed over probably 5,000 times before they gave it to me to get the words why are these people laughing? is there something I'm doing wrong? Is there, some embarrassing thing that I don't know is going on here? And during a break, the executive producer from Warner Brothers came out, and he said, in fact, executive vice president of animation, and he said, Burt, we are also blown away in here. I said, well, why? He said, your voice sounds exactly the same as it did 50 years ago. It's almost scary, and people here cannot understand it at all. They can't understand it. And I took that as a really great compliment. But at the time you're doing something, and you're seeing all these people reacting, not like you think they're reacting. You're wondering, oh my God, what have I done? But
voice acting is lonely like that. A lot of people don't understand. You touched on it earlier when you're like, Burt, when you said you and Adam recorded your line separately, and that's how it is a lot of the time. The people who hear it all together are the people in that other room. Right. It's up to us as the creators to pretend and create like we are there, and to act it, to put the magic behind the wand, so to speak. So I can. When you did it earlier, you haven't missed a step, my friend. You haven't missed a step. So I look forward to hearing you in more projects. There is a new animated film releasing this May that called DC League of Super Pets. And just before we go to our game, we have a game here. We wanted to know if Robin had a dog, right? We'll go back to this real quick. What kind of dog would Robin have if you're
That's a great question. I just want to tell you one quick thing. About a year ago, I filmed a segment for Supergirl in which they were having all of these multiverses and all of this war and
Crisis on Infinite.
Crisis on Infinite Earths, right? Yes. There you go. And in fact, it wasn't just Supergirl; it was all the Warner Brothers shows, the
Arrow,
Arrow, and the other ones. And the thing that was interesting is that when I went there, I didn't know this, but they had me walking a dog down the street.
Okay. I saw the dog. Yeah.
A German Shepherd. And I'm saying to myself, okay, well, do they know? I mean, are they doing this as some kind of a pun? Because, I operate the largest giant breed dog rescue in the world. And I'm handling dogs all day long. They do it for that reason. And that was not the reason. The reason they had that German Shepherd is because in the original Batman comic book, Batman had Ace the Bat Dog that was a German Shepherd. Isn't that interesting? So I was walking Ace. I mean, that was kind of a tribute to.
I like that.
The comic book.
That's some deep writer room stuff that the guys and girls who were and people who were thinking of that were like, you know what? Let's dig deep.
Yeah, there you go.
Dig really deep.
Wow.
That's an amazing story.
Yeah.
Well, we promised you a game earlier, Mr. Ward, and we will not disappoint. The game is called Would You Rather? It's a simple game. We're going to provide you with 2 questions. Would you rather A or B? There's no wrong answer, and it's a little silly. We're here to have. So, Heather, you want to start us off with the first one here?
I would be honored. Okay, Burt, would you rather ice skate with Tara Lipinski, or would you rather ice skate with Michelle Kwan?
Well, I don't know. I mean, they're both great. I guess probably just watching the movement, I guess, with Tara Lipinski, because looks like she's doing a very artistic move there.
Good choice.
Keeping it old school. Good choice. Good choice indeed.
All right, Josh, you got the next one?
All right. Moving along. Would you rather have a real life bat phone that can call anyone in the world immediately? Or have a Shakespeare bust with a button that leads to a secret room in your house where you keep all the dog food?
Well, actually, I have both of those.
Oh, of course you do.
So it's hard to, it's hard to pick one over the other. I guess to be able to communicate worldwide is probably even more important.
Fair enough.
I'm going with the button, man. I'm going with the secret door. I just want to have a secret door sometimes.
Yeah. Me too. That'd be fun. All right, here's the next one, Burt. Would you rather have Beethoven as a spokesdog for Gentle Giants, or Clifford, the big red dog?
you know something, our daughter grew up with Clifford, the giant red dog, but because we have Beethovens, we have Saint Bernards and stuff like that, I'd have to go with the real thing, because I see them every day, and I love them, and they love me, and I have to go for the real thing.
Fair enough. And do they slobber as much as I hear?
No, actually,
No.
no, not at all. Let me tell you, that's what they call movie magic. Like if you saw Beethoven and stuff like that, you know what I mean? Now, there are some dogs, now to be fair, there are some dogs that when they drink, okay, because they come over with those big jowls and they're drinking water, they get what we call a bucket of water mouth. You know what I mean? Okay. And if you stand next to them and they've had a nice big drink and they shake their head, you're going to get wet. But it's not the goo that you might think it is, although it's possible. There are some dogs that it depends, on their saliva glands and stuff like that, but almost never do you have that, that issue.
Interesting. Noted.
Interesting.
Okay.
Clifford
Excellent,
gets an
Josh.
honorable mention, but we're going with Beethoven. I like it. All right, moving on. Would you rather, my friend, would you rather be in a movie about your life? Would you rather a movie about your life star Taron Egerton, or a movie about your life starring Tom Holland?
Oh, I hate to say that neither one is right. I'd rather have me doing it.
I
Okay.
love it.
Are you available?
Are you available?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, the way they do it with your voice, they could just CG the face nowadays, like they did.
Well,
in The
actually,
Irishman, and they're
I'll
doing
tell
with
you,
Mark Hamill.
Well, no, I'll tell you something interesting.
Yes.
There is technology that we have that it is out there. It is kind of esoteric, but in today's world, digitally, I can create myself exactly as I was when I was doing Batman. Exactly. I mean, in so lifelike that you cannot tell that it's not real. This isn't out yet. When you see these things on TV and stuff and some of these animated movies, no, what I'm talking about, you cannot tell it is not real. You cannot tell it is not real. And we're using technology like that to create entire 3D worlds and characters involving myself and my wife, and in which it is so photorealistic, nobody will not know it's us. You'll just believe that somehow when I was doing Batman, I had time to film some other superhero movies.
We have the technology. I love it. Okay, cool. Well, here's the next one. Would you rather listen to Elvis on repeat for 24 hours or listen to the Beatles on repeat for 24 hours?
I think Elvis. I think Elvis was very special. I mean, my God, the Beatles were fantastic. In fact, it was the time when we were successful. I remember Adam came to me one time. He says, Burt, there are the 3 B's. I said, the 3 B's? Yes. Bond, Beatles, and Batman.
That's right. I love these things that Adam would come and say to you to just pronounce his regalia. I think it's amazing. So
Fabulous.
Elvis it is. I love it. Going with
Yeah.
Elvis. Yeah, no one messes with the king. No one messes with the king. Moving on. Would you rather be able to speak with dogs meant telepathically? Let's be very specific.
Right.
or
Right.
would we both telepathically, or be able to speak every language on earth?
Oh, I'd much rather speak with dogs. Okay,
Right?
now I have 2 human children. I have 2 human children. I love them very much. And I've had 15,500 canine kids. And I'll tell you one thing that you can't put down about these canine kids. Not one of those 15,500 ever asked me to buy them a car.
I love it. That's right. They sure work for
Yes.
gas money nowadays, right?
The night is young. Today could be the day, Oh yeah, I think gas prices. Fair. All right, Bert. We
My
have
son's
one.
just hitting that. He's 15 and a half. He's starting to breach the question. Like, so Dad, what are we doing? I was like, don't. Yeah. What you mean when Dad gets a used car, you get to drive it is really what it's going to be.
Oh.
So
All right, we have one final one, Bert. So would you rather compete on Dancing with the Stars or compete on The Masked Singer?
Oh, I would rather do neither of those. To quote Clint Eastwood in Dirty Harry, a man has got to know his limitations.
Fair enough.
I am not a dancer. I tried to take a dance class and they were very gracious to me. They said, Bert, we want to refund your money. You're going to scare all of our other customers away. No.
I've had to replace the floors 3 times this week.
And the singing thing, the same thing, oh my gosh. No, I realized, although I did do a record for MGM Records when I
Frank
was doing
Zappa.
Batman. They talked me into it, but my song was called "Boy Wonder I Love You," and it was I had taken a collection of these fan mails and put them together, and I read this. Okay, and it was actually got to number 6 on WLS in Chicago, but because of the time things were so conservative, they pulled it off the air. And it wasn't that I had said anything bad. It was from a fan, a young girl that wrote, "Oh, can you come over and visit me at my house? I'd love to have you. I'd love you to spend the whole summer with me and stuff." I mean, it was just the sweetest, innocent thing. But back then, it wasn't considered innocent.
Times are different. Understandable. Well, Burt, this has been such an honor, and I wish we could talk to you forever, because I feel like we could learn so much from you, and about your passions for all things with animals and your career. But before we do wrap this up, is there any final thoughts that you want to leave us with?
Absolutely. Different things. Like, for example, I explained to people the first 100 years are the hardest. After that, it's pretty smooth sailing. Wouldn't you think? Pretty smooth. But those first 100 years. The other thing is, on a very positive note, I once learned the 3 essentials to happiness. Would you like to know them? The 3 essentials to happiness. And after all, if you think about it, what would be more valuable in this world than being happy?
Sure.
So here are the 3 essentials to happiness. 1, someone to love. 2, something to do. And 3, something to look forward to. Those are the 3 essentials to happiness.
That's great. Spoken by a true superhero, my friend. Spoken
Right.
by a real life superhero. Absolutely. Don't ever sell yourself short on that. You and everything you're doing with your company is what real life superheroes are made of. People who go out there to make a difference.
And Bond, Beatles, and Batman.
There you go.
3 on there.
You guys have absorbed.
We have a tradition here when I'm going to serenade you with a fake movie trailer, kind of inspired by everything we've talked about.
Okay.
So, are you ready for this?
Absolutely.
Okay, here we go. In 1968, the boy wonder emerged, and now he's back and better than ever before. This time, we're not just tackling crime, we're tackling senior dogs. Burt Ward stars as Robin the Boy Wonder returns in Robin, Gentle Giants. In theaters near you, with the new CGI remastered version of Burt Ward and his new wife Tracy looking smashing just as they did in 1965. It's time to get back in action. It's time to save St. Bernards, Russian wolfhounds, and any other large breed giant dog. Because this summer, the action's back. Robin, Gentle Giants, rated PG.
Oh.
Hey, fantastic. Fantastic.
Once again, Josh, that was a brilliant voiceover.
I love
always.
that, Josh.
That was
Fantastic.
He was amazing. And Burt, thank you so much again. And I hope one day we get to meet all of your doggies.
Yes, I'll tell you something. It is quite something. I just want to tell you one quick little story here.
Please.
One of my dearest friends who I worked with for years, who accompanied me on my personal appearances, and he'd handle all the stuff and handle the autograph signings, and he did everything for me. He came to my house this probably 10 years ago, and he said, Burt, with all the animals in your house, I've never been in your house. I've never been in there. Could I come in? I said, of course you can come in. I said, now there are over 50 dogs in the house. Okay. He said, oh, I love dogs. I said, well, great. So he came in the front door, and you have to understand, we have a little foyer. He came in, and it kind of comes to a point where you can look to the left and down the hallway. You can look to the right, down another hallway, and you can look in front of you to the big living room. And everywhere he looked, there were giant dogs lying down. Nobody's moving. Nobody got up. Nobody made any noise. But when he saw all those dogs at one time, he actually got a little frightened, because it is almost overpowering to see that many animals. You know what I mean? And they're let me tell you, nobody would have bitten him, they would have licked him to death, but they didn't even bother to get up. You know what I mean? But I just realized, at that point, how people can be affected by when you're in a situation where you're having an enormous number of something, you know what I mean? And you feel very like, very small in comparison to what's this world that you've now entered. So he never came in again, but he did love the dogs, and I would bring them out and he'd just pet them and stuff like that. But it was actually, he said to me, boy, nobody's ever going to rob your house.
No,
You're
don't set a
protected.
foot in here. You'll know immediately if anyone.
Well, Burt, thank you so much again. This has been such an absolute honor, and I don't know when I'm going to be able to actually process that we're talking to right now, but thank you so much again. This has been so wonderful.
Thank you,
Well,
Burt.
thank
Your
you
stories
both.
with you and Adam and your continued work that you're providing is immeasurable and really, really awesome. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you. And as we said on Batman, to the Batmobile!